Hello, my name is Alexis Michael, and I'll be speaking on case number 4 about climate change refugees. The question we will be addressing today is what moral obligation, if any, does the United States government have to assist the residents of the vanishing island? I will be arguing that the United States does have a moral obligation to the residents of the vanishing island. The case we'll be looking at today is the issues that face the residents of Isle de Jean Charles, also known as the Vanishing Island. The island is in Louisiana and is about 80 miles from New Orleans. The residents that live there are Native Americans from the Houma, Biloxi, and Chicamacha Choctaw tribe. The island was settled 107 years ago to avoid consequences of the Indian Removal Act. Due to the issues that are involving climate change, the island has lost 90% of its land due to flooding, and the National Climate Assessment Rate has put the island at the nation's most vulnerable, and $48 million federal tax dollars to move the entire community to a new part of the country. This money is a part of a $1 billion federal disaster grant program to assist communities affected by climate change. However, other parts of Louisiana have been protected with pumps and levees, but not Isle de Jean Charles. Spokespersons have said that the island is a lost cause, and officials have said that this move will be voluntary, but is not clear if residents will comply. Some residents are yearning to leave so their children can have better lives, but others refuse to leave because they do not want to leave behind their ancestors or lose parts of their heritage. The arguments I will be making today will depend on consequentialism, moral responsibility, and John Rawls' political theory. Moving into our first argument, consequentialism. Consequentialism says that when an action is morally required, just because it produces the best overall results. The pros of consequentialism is the United States being morally bound to help the climate refugees on the island, since leaving the residents on the island would cause the population of the island to suffer. The best scenario would be to help relocate the community, therefore yielding the best results. Helping the residents would allow the members of the community who would like to relocate a place to raise their children that is safe, unlike the island that is constantly flooding and destroying infrastructure. When addressing consequentialist theories, we must answer two questions. 1, what is good? And 2, how do we approach good? In this scenario, the good is protecting people from being climate refugees. These people would otherwise be in danger due to the flooding and destroying of infrastructure. The second question of how do we approach good is answered by relocating the refugees. Now, there are some people who don't want to necessarily leave, so we must think of a way that we can make them safe as well. So now we have to address how we will approach good. We can take the utilitarian approach and say we must just help the majority by saying we must determine the best possible outcome for the most amount of people. However, there is a significant amount of people who don't want to leave the island due to their history and ancestry there. And there are a significant amount of people who do want to leave. This is where satisfying consequentialism comes in, which is odd since maximizing good is usually rationally required. This would apply to people who don't want to leave. Disasters, we see that there are people on the news who refuse to leave and leave their homes. However, there is still an evacuation, and if people wish to stay on the island, then the United States government should allow the group to stay, granted that the government gives them all the proper information so they can make that choice. Now, satisfying consequentialism will come in because the United States government is going to be helping people who want to leave. Therefore, we are maximizing the most amount of good that we can make. Now we will discuss moral responsibility. Moral responsibility refers to the acts or state of affairs for which you can be praised or blamed. When discussing what the United States should do, the principle ought implies this principle means that if one ought to do something, then one must first be able to do so, meaning one is only morally required to do something if it has the means to do so. In this case, the United States already has $1 billion allocated for climate change refugees, and the government has already allocated $48 million specifically for Isle de John Charles. So, the government has the means to help the island, meaning they should help the residents who want to relocate. Now leading into causal responsibility versus moral responsibility. Causal responsibility would be if, for example, if we did not know why the flooding is occurring in Isle de John Charles, and then we found out it was climate change. Whereas moral responsibility would be if the government knowingly knew of the dangers of climate change and chose not to act. Now, one objection to the principle previously discussed is if something random happens, you cannot be held morally responsible. However, climate change has been a relevant issue since early industrialization. It is not spontaneous, and human waste and buildup of greenhouse gases due to humanity not caring for the planet. Also, politicians have the ability to change the progress of climate change by enacting laws like the Green New Deal. Issues revolving climate change can be addressed, and therefore there is a responsibility of the American government to act. The next theory we will be discussing is John Rawls' political theory. John Rawls is one of the most notable political theorists of the 20th century and is most known for his works, The Theory of Justice and Political Liberalism. In Rawls' works, two key theories help address what moral obligation the United States has to help the residents of the island. First, the veil of ignorance is described as each of whom is responsible for the essential interest of a free and equal citizen, meaning that the metaphysical veil that blocks individuals from judging someone based on societal constructs. The United States government should use this when dealing with the residents on the island. This is because the United States has a long and bloody history with Native Americans, and the island was settled due to the residents' ancestor from fleeing the effects of Andrew Jackson's Indian Removal Act. The United States government must be mindful and ask for the community's input to where they relocate. Give them a random piece of land. They should be mindful that these are human beings who are losing not just their homes but their history as well. Next, John Rawls' theory of justice is defined as that first, each person has an equal claim to basic rights and liberties, and second, that the inequalities in an institution must be corrected to benefit the least advantaged members of society. The United States government has an obligation to these residents because they do not have a place to live that is sustainable. Next, the residents of this island are some of the most disadvantaged members of society because of the situation that has put them in harm's risk and no way to change their outcome. Objection to consequentialism is that no matter how much you want to prevent a certain action, there is no guarantee that you will prevent that action from happening. Objections to moral responsibility are that humans do not possess free will and therefore cannot be responsible for actions they do or do not take. In conclusion, the United States government is morally obligated to help the citizens on the vanishing island because of consequentialism, moral responsibility, and John Rawls' political theories of justice. Thank you for watching this presentation, and I hope you guys have a great day.